Okay, Masters, Moira. Pretty standard team comp.
Observe the barrier.
Five, four, two, one. Attackers incoming. Defend objective A. Made real.
I have a ball. And a Ursa. We have no history for that program.
So if you have no hit scan for Pharah, your only way to deal with it pretty much is like with pull combos or like Doom being really lucky and or like your Sigma, or so what you can do is more is you can like just poke at her with right click. That is usually enough to scare away.
I have a ball.
Especially when your team is like full health and there's nothing you can do to heal them.
And a Ursa. We have no history for that program.
He's already dead. But yeah, it's okay to throw a damage orb at pharmacy, just because that's usually enough to scare them away, or if they don't get scared away, it helps your team get rid of the pharmacy. So right now, you don't want to be here, even though you don't have much health. You want to be with the rest of your team, although I guess the rest of your team is able to clean up.
Ball.
Very fortunately, but because your team had no healer, basically.
Oh shit. Kinda nasty with that tracking.
But yeah, we just got lucky there. So what happened?
And a Ursa.
So you fade into this room, you get hit, and then you get scared. It's fine, I guess.
Ball. Going above field.
In the future, you can maybe go through like.
And a Ursa.
You could take this path here. That way. Maybe. Because your Orisa's mainly pretty much full health right now, and she's fortified, so she's gonna stay alive for at least a little bit longer. And she has her shield that she can shield dance with too. What you're more interested in is your critical Sigma and your DPS who are frontlining. So you can like just walk over there because you're safe indoors.
What's that one? Ball.
I know you can have a higher quality. Come on. I don't know why this is always so weird.
Ball's left. Going above field. I have no shield.
At higher quality when I was watching it earlier. Alright. Maybe it's because I'm recording.
Ball one.
I don't know.
Ball one on point behind. Ball one.
Probably for us.
Alright, back up the point. Alright, Blanco.
We'll back up.
Playing?
Watch for garage.
I was gonna say there's no point in heal or trying to DPS down a full health ball with shields, but then you looked away, so it's fine. I guess you have a McCree now, but it's
I got punched in.
it's not your job to deal with Pharah necessarily, but you can definitely help against the Pharah, and it's also important to know where she is, so you don't just get surprised when she just drops down upon you guys and brushes.
Come. 20's on. Nice pick. Hold
It's like
On, push corner, push corner.
what you want to do with Moira when you're not healing is to try to like apply pressure,
Stay behind card.
especially against pharmacy. Like one orb or just like
Or dead.
right click it was enough to usually scare them away or scare them back.
Okay, back.
That's
Still gonna use my ult.
unfortunate that your Lucio and McCree pushed up very far. Okay, that should have been a heal orb.
Okay, back. I'm still gonna use my ult here. Reaper, you can use yours.
So your team gets slammed and they get pulled, and you're backing up as well. You don't have Lucio, so whenever you lose your second healer, you want to mainly focus on healing. You want to throw more heal orbs than damage orb most of the time, and you want to be left clicking more than right clicking, especially when you don't have your second healer, because then you're the only source of healing, and if you're not healing, then you're not getting any healing. So there are times for damage orb to be used, but this is you definitely want to be, because what is damage orb for, right? You can use it to zone people back basically, or to help secure a kill, or you can use it to like peek around corners, whatever. But so it's mainly used to like apply pressure, to scare people back, or like to stop them from pushing as hard, or stop them from pushing right now, which is actually like, when you just think of it like in terms like that, then yeah, this is fine. But so you get some value out of damage orb because it does scare them back a bit. It does apply a little bit of pressure, right? But then you have to always compare, like, Overwatch is a game of value. People might not think of it that way, but it's definitely one way you can think of it. Like, whichever abilities, whoever can get the most value out of their character and their abilities is gonna end up being better than other people who can't get as much value, right? So yes, you can get some value out of the damage orb, but how much value are you actually going to get when you're down 2 and they're up 2, versus how much value you would get from throwing a healing orb right now and like doing a bunch of burst damage, and you have coalescence too, that you could use to keep your team up, although you probably shouldn't use it because you're already down 2 and it looks like a bunch of your team is going to die here, so hopefully you hold it. But yeah, just basically, if you had thrown a heal orb there, your Reaper would still be alive. And then you would have killed the Doomfist, and then you would have been down 1, and then with Coalescence, you probably could have, I don't know, come back from that. With the Bongo as well. So someone does call it winnable, and that's why you ult, I think, but it really wasn't at that point.
Still gonna use my ult here. Reaper, you can use yours.
If you had thrown that healing orb instead of a damage orb, you probably could have been able to win this fight just from ults. Or if you had used Cole earlier, but by the time you used it, like, you lost your Reaper already, so you're down 3. It was just you, Orisa, Sigma, and then Orisa dies right as you use it. So at that point, it's not really worth it.
We have Believer, Reason. Of course, it's the Reaper.
If a reliever, it's unlucky. Nice fade. That was nice. That's a lot of ults from the enemy team. Nice job not focusing damage on the ball.
Holy.
So in this situation here, where your Orisa's just getting focused down and getting coalescence, and just hold down left click on her and throw healing orb at her, especially since you have most of your meter. You don't have to really be worrying about dealing damage. You shouldn't really be worrying about dealing damage either, because at this point, I'm not sure where the rest of your team is. You can't really see them, but you're just trying to stall for time, and it's probably not winnable considering it's just in this picture alone 3v2, and then you lost your Sigma. They did lose their Mercy though, so we can actually see what happens. So they lose Pharah, so they're down 1, and then your Orisa, your Sig. Okay, so down 2, but then Sig died. So you're actually up 1 right now. Okay. So if you're up 1, then you have the advantage. So you want to stabilize as fast as you can, because then you'll just win with numbers, and your spawn is so close, right? So you do not want to be dealing damage. You don't want to be using right click unless your bar meter, unless you run out, because your goal now is to stabilize, because if you stabilize, you win. If you can keep your Orisa up through the Coalescence, through the Doomfist, through the ball, you win, because you have numbers and you have close spawn. So that's your win condition, basically. Your win condition is to stabilize so that you can win, because you're up 1. Now, I'm not sure where your Lucio is. He didn't die. Oh, wait. No, you have Reaper. Oh, God. Reaper left, so it's actually even right now. So you still want to stabilize, right? Basically, moral of the story, you should be healing your Orisa right now.
Holy.
Yeah. Orisa kind of just gets bursted down.
Holy.
Not really much you could have done there, except for...
Holy.
You do switch to damage a little bit when the Doom comes in, because you try to damage Doom. Or, yeah, here, like... I'm not sure who you're looking at. Oh, you're looking at Moira, I think. But you should have... If you had stayed on healing there, and then... Instead of looking towards the Moira, and then swap to heal...
Holy.
and then faded when Doom came in, your Orisa might be alive. And then it might be winnable. It's still winnable, I'd say. That's a huge Coalescence. You save that Lucio's life. You should be able to win this now here.
Flowing. Flowing.
So, you're in a pretty good position here, right?
Water getting out.
Why do you fade?
Flowing.
You kind of fade out into the open, and then you're not close to your teammates. I mean, you're kind of close, but like you're not right next to them, which eventually is the reason why you die, because you're like, oh, I'm kind of far from my teammates, and then you walk close to them to try to heal the Sigma, and then Doomfist comes in and you died. And he was able to do that because, well, he probably could have killed you if you were by your teammates, but if you were closer to your teammates, he might have like reconsidered going in. Maybe not, I don't know. But just be aware of your fade. Like, whenever you leave fade, you always want to make sure you're leaving fade in a safe position. Or you're leaving fade into a safe position or into a safe situation. Because if you fade somewhere just randomly like that, and you have like no way to escape or no way to stay safe, you're kind of screwed. Because that opens up the enemy team. That opens up opportunities for the enemy team to kill you.
Focus the ball. Don't know why. Get the Baron.
Played that pretty well, I think. Ooh.
Fine. Play safe on card. Don't push up or anything. Wait for your reset.
Reaper up top.
Everyone's had a fair now. Roof around. On him.
Doom low.
So, whenever someone gets uppercutted by Doomfist, don't damage the Doomfist, because your goal as Moira is not to. Yes, you can deal damage. You can deal a significant amount of it too, but your goal is to ultimately keep your team up. And so whenever, because you're not gonna be able to kill a Doomfist when he's half health. If Doomfist was lower, you could right click him down. But definitely, whenever someone gets uppercutted by Doomfist, you definitely want to be healing the person who got uppercutted, because you want to ensure that they stay alive. Because once they get uppercutted by Doomfist, they're a super easy target for Doomfist to shoot, and then an easy target for their teammates, Doomfist's teammates, to shoot as well. So definitely focus your healing onto the and you do eventually. But like as soon as someone gets up, like as soon as Doom comes in, if he's low, you can maybe do a right click, but he's about to get a whole burst of shields anyways, so it's generally better to, like, as soon as you see Doomfist come in, either fade out and then hold down left click, or just hold down left click, or throw an orb or something, healing orb. That is.
Ball behind, ball.
Nice.
Now ideally, you'd be throwing the damage orb at the Doomfist before he comes in, so then he gets scared away. That'd be like the ideal usage of a damage orb, because then you're pressuring him back. Nice shot pocketing the Reaper. That's actually really good for him,
Nice move.
because he gets a ton of lifesteal, and then you're healing on top of that is really nice. So it's a minor thing. That damage orb you threw there is, again, it comes down to, will you get, like, what do you get more value from? Like, do you get more value from a damage orb or a healing orb there? And you're already completely pushed up to their spawn, so you're not really getting that much extra value with the damage orb. You're not really like pressuring them back, because you're already like exerting maximum pressure on them. That's why they're just in their spawn. It's even though your teammates were full health, they might not be for very longer, because the enemy team is in their spawn, right? So throwing a healing orb might be better there, just because then you can, especially if you can like bounce it on some walls so it stays around, so then it can keep your team up, preemptively keep them up, so that you don't like get picked or something. Because if you get picked here, you're gonna be in a pretty tough spot. You'll probably get one more fight if you get picked here, but it's not that big a deal though. You managed to get out, so it's fine. Good job just holding down left click there. That was actually big.
Even if they won't play, it's worth it.
Heal your
That was fun.
Mesa. It's fine.
Bongo and Flex here. They'll call us. Doom on right. Take here. Flank.
Yo, Reaper behind.
So if Reaper's behind, you're not gonna be able to kill a Reaper as Moira. You can help, but if especially if no one's turning for the Reaper, there's nothing you can do about it. So it's better to, like, instead of the damage orb, holding right down right click on him is fine. But instead of the damage orb, you should have thrown a healing orb, because you should have been expecting that Reaper's gonna ult. Like when he teleports in, even if he doesn't ult,
Flank.
Yo, Reaper
he
behind.
can do a lot of damage when he's this close to your tanks. He can do a lot of damage. So at this point, and he's gonna, as a result of doing that massive damage, he's gonna get massive lifesteal as well. So your little tickle damage with Moira isn't gonna do much against the Reaper damage wise, because he's just gonna heal it all back. So it's better to keep your tanks alive again, so that they can turn around and deal with the Reaper, rather than you trying to deal with the Reaper, because you honestly can't. So Moira is really good at killing squishies who can't heal themselves, like an Ana, especially, without an aid is a great target for Moira to kill. Right, it's just like squishy targets like Tracer or flankers like Genji, who can't heal themselves, Pharah even, and like, you definitely don't want to be dealing damage to heroes like Reaper or like Mei or like Wrecking Ball earlier, unless your team is also focusing that target, then it's fine, because then you're really not getting that much value. You're not doing that much damage to them in the grand scheme of things. And because of that, because of you dealing not that much damage, your team is also not getting healing, which is, yeah.
Gone, please.
If you had thrown a healing orb, your Doomfist might have lived, and that is actually pretty big, because then Doom can do massive damage with a bongo, and you might be able to win this fight because of it. So yeah, Moira is just like, it all comes down to, a lot of times, just she's relatively simple, but she's still kind of hard. Like, she's not as easy as people claim she is, because you still have to, because like a lot of times you can get value from damage orb, but you have to compare that with the value that you would get from a healing orb, and if the value that you get from a healing orb is greater than the value you get from a damage orb, then you don't want to be throwing the damage orb, you want to be throwing the healing orb. So it's a balancing act, and same with holding left click and right click. There are times where you don't really need to be holding left click, so you can help your team do just that little bit of extra damage and hold down right click. But then there are other times where, yes, you can still get value from holding down right click, but you get more value from holding down left click, and that's just like,
Wait, this game's actually
Where's the Widow?
that's unfortunate. And that's like your job to make those split-second decisions in game.
Doom behind.
And hopefully my job to help you learn
Okay.
how to make the right decisions better. Hopefully.
Low on heals. Doom.
You're gonna die. Yep. So whenever Doom does like a rollout like that, I don't know if you play Doom
Low on
much,
heals.
but like, so the way Doom's E works is it gets more damage the longer the damage increases. Like, the longer amount of time he spends in the air after he's pressed E, the more damage it does, right? So you definitely, whenever you see a Doom come at you, you want to be pressing shift to get out that's like you already want to do that. But especially if you see a Doom like coming slowly at you with an E, that means it's going to do a bunch of damage, which means you're going to die in one uppercut. All he has to do is uppercut you once, and you're dead. So, or like, you know, shoot and then uppercut, but that's like half a millisecond. You know, it takes no time at all. So you definitely want to fade out as soon as you see, and it's not like normally when a Doom comes in, you might fade out after you get uppercutted, right? That's fine. But when it comes in slowly at you, you get more time to react. But you can't expect to be able to fade out after you get uppercutted, because you're just gonna die with the uppercut. So, yeah, you wanna just whenever you see a slow Doom fist, E seismic slam, I believe it's called, fade out, just fade. That was really unlucky. I don't know why your Sigma's getting mad at him.
What is on high ground? Top left.
Walls until 2:30, 2:29.
Got Doom there.
Widow right, Widow right.
So one thing you can do, when you hear Widow right, is you can throw an orb right side, and it'll just, you know, bounce, do whatever the orb wants to do over there, and that'll zone off the Widow from playing there, at least until your orb goes away anyways. And that's something that, depending on the situation, might be worth doing. Use Fade though, but like, the Widow could still be there, and she could still just shoot into your backline. We'll see if you get punished. You know, it's... Doesn't look like the Widow goes on the flank, which is fine.
Doom should die, Doom should die. Doom needs to die.
Doom one.
Doom, behind us. Lucio now, Lucio.
One Sigma.
Sigma.
One.
We got this. They got a Hanzo
That was pretty well
Widow.
played, actually. And the only thing is, like, maybe damage orb towards the Widow to scare her back, but other than that, everything was really well done.
Okay, we have Bastion now. That's fine.
Bastion? I guess that's fine. You want to be pocketing your
Hanzo
Bastion right now.
Hanzo right.
Don't pocket the
right.
Bastion.
Hanzo right.
Hanzo right.
Yeah. You were calling Hanzo right, and
We don't fight this right.
I mean,
no, you don't. Don't coalescence. Don't. Oh no.
Doom.
You force out 2 ults though, so I guess that's worth it. And 3 if you include the Sigma ult. So that's fine actually that you cold there. It's a fast ult.
Get the supercharger first. Hanzo top right, top left.
You have orb. He's half health. Just throw a damage orb.
do that.
Yeah. So earlier,
Hanzo right.
it's more important that you keep your Bastion up, than because you're not gonna be able to kill a Hanzo, when he's full health and when no one else is looking at him. Just from your well, you can, but by the time you kill him, your Bastion's already gonna be dead. So at this point, it's like a gamble. Do you risk killing the Hanzo and hoping that your Bastion survives, or do you pocket your Bastion hoping that he will end up killing the rest of the enemy team or whatever, that he kills the Hanzo maybe or scares him away? It's definitely better to put your hopes into the Bastion,
Right. Hanzo right.
and try to keep him up, because
Hanzo right.
yeah. Are you gonna be able to heal Coalescence? No, probably not. But could you? Your BAP was coming back from spawn. Could you have kept him up long enough for your BAP to come back and throw a field?
Right.
Maybe. And then
I still be.
your Bastion would be alive here. And then you'd be even on DPS. But you have a Bastion, so you'd
don't
probably
fight
end
this,
up
right?
winning because of it. But it's like, yes, you can do damage, but you always want to make sure, like, when you're doing damage, that you're not missing out on value from healing.
Oh, he got our Lucio.
What the?
There was a flaw in my approach.
On this shit with Flux or that.
Why have we stopped?
I did not know. This is difficult for our Reaper to
Heal
actually
orb.
do things.
I guess it doesn't really matter.
Reaper's fine.
No, I think this Reaper has bad coding. I don't know.
Reaper is bad coding.
Fighting or is that- Behind barrier.
That's just unlucky. It happens.
He's only gonna work if you ever do this with that.
Doom's going left. Doom's left.
They didn't get beat. None of them got beat.
Oh, don't call us it. So you're up 2 right now. You have Bongo still, and you've already used Sigma ult. You're fine. You don't need that Coalescence. And then you Reaper ult too for some reason. So with Moira, Coalescence is a super fast charging ult, right? But then that doesn't mean you can just waste it. It means you can be more like less reserved about using it. Like just use it whenever you think you have to. But like when you have Bongo already, and you have 2 picks, there's really no need to Bongo or to Coalescence. There are some situations where you might need to, if you need to shut down, if like the enemy team has an ult combo that you're really worried about that could turn the fight around, or if you have some people who are really low. But your teammates were all like, they're all pretty much full health here, weren't
Doom's
they?
going left. Doom's left.
They didn't get beat.
Yeah,
None of them got beat.
everyone's pretty much full health. Yosho's pretty much full, Arisa's full, Sigma's full. So
There was a flaw.
you just gotta. I mean, the rest of your Coalescences have been pretty good so far this game, so I wouldn't worry about it too much. It's not like a huge problem that you have to fix. It's just probably weren't paying attention that one fight or something. It happens.
We got time for one more fight. Keep backing. Keep backing. Keep backing.
Oh, Doomfist should not have gone in there. He just staggered him.
Go back. You just punched in. Like,
It's fine. We got this. We got this. We can speed on. Come on. Go main. Go main.
I have Coalescence. Nice. So you want to keep up your team.
Doom. We gotta get Doom first. Doom first.
So, okay, you
Sigma,
held
Sigma,
it,
Sigma.
or you win this fight. But Sigma, most of his damage from his ult comes after the slam, right?
with the one.
From the ult, that is. Obviously, his team could focus fire your team when you're in the air. So you still want to be healing them in the air too. But it's more important, like, it's most important to be healing your team right after Sigma's ult, because then
Number 3.
that's when your team takes
Victory right,
50%.
victory far right. Like near the mega.
That's when your team loses 50% of their health. So
Victory,
you
mega,
won.
right.
You didn't get punished for it, but you can in the future. Oh.
Moira, focus more.
So you keep your doom. Keep your doom.
Moira, focus Moira.
It's most of the time, not always. It's never always. Nothing's ever always in Overwatch, but most of the times, it's much better to try to keep up a critical health Doomfist than it is to deal damage to the full health enemy team.
Actually, no, Doom first. You gotta get Doom. Doom first, Doom low. Doom. Moira, focus Moira. Actually, no, Doom first. You gotta get Doom.
Sigma walks through shield, so you couldn't have healed him if you wanted to, but you weren't healing.
Doom first, Doom
If
low.
the shield wasn't there, you should have been healing.
Doom. Moira now, Moira. Focus Moira. Bash him. Lucio.
Nice job. Another minor thing.
Lucio.
When your Reaper ults, you want to like
Bruh.
pocket him. Just like
Doom,
spray your
doom,
pee
doom,
all
doom,
over
doom,
him when he ults.
Moira now, Moira.
Like
Moira,
right here?
Moira. Focus Moira.
When he ults here, he has beat, but then Bastion comes out. Instead of dealing damage to Bastion, it's better to keep your Reaper up,
Bash him.
I think. But it worked out. And the reason for that is because your right click doesn't deal that much damage. It's like little small increments of damage, right? And then Bastion has armor and his passive that reduces damage even more. So you're not going to be dealing that much to the Bastion. It's more important to let someone else on your team deal with the Bastion, and you try to keep your Reaper up, because if your Reaper is up, you have a very good chance of winning the fight. If a Reaper dies, though, like the chances of the enemy team getting you guys off point and winning that fight was probably very low. But your Reaper dying increases that chance of them winning just by a little bit, right? By a significant amount. Are they still going to win? Probably not, but there's always a chance. So, yeah. In those situations where the enemy team is staggering in, yes, you want to be killing the staggers as fast as you can, but it's also important to keep your team up.
Gotta love how both our DPS aren't in voice.
Yeah, I know. I asked them to do one thing and they instantly have the voice chat. Typical DPS.
They apparently Sigma Bastion.
Typical DPS.
Yeah, they got Bastion Mag.
I'm a DPS. I don't do that. Most of the times.
We didn't need to play. Just play right here, where I am.
See, that's a good damage orb, because it bounces between those two walls and it kind of like zones them away. But it applies pressure on them and it makes it so that they don't want to push in immediately, and that is good. That gives your team time to reposition and rotate.
We don't let them set up.
Bastion.
One.
Lamp.
Body one.
Heal. Oh no.
Play inside corner. There's one.
Reaper should not have done that.
We use ults? No, we lose this.
That should be a healing orb there. So you couldn't have done anything about that. The Baptiste ulted in front of the Bastion, or else he just melted. But here you want to keep your team up alive as much as you can, because it's possible they can get, like Sigma especially, if he can get his flux, he can lift everyone off point, and then you just win from there. But like, you definitely don't want to be dealing damage to shield, because it's pointless. You don't want to really be dealing damage to Sigma either, because he's got his healers and your damage is going to do nothing. So again, in this scenario, you want to focus more on healing.
Use ults? No, we lose this.
That damage orb is not going to do anything, because you're applying pressure to them, but like they don't really care because they've already like won the fight. So they're going to want to be here anyways. A healing orb would have
It's fine. We win one.
been better.
If we could force out gold with.
It's honestly not that big a
gold
deal.
since
A
we're
healing
gonna
orb would have
flex them off
staggered your
our-
team more,
Yeah, no show call.
so it's probably fine. I'm sorry, I'm really tired.
Where are we holding? We should hold like a corner.
We need to play.
Like,
close
maybe where
if we
Orisa
stay with
is?
Bastion.
I think we should hold where Orisa is. Orisa, come back.
No, that's too far. Their Bastion's just gonna shut us. And we're
You
gonna
can
get
fade in there. So like, whenever you fade, you want to make sure you end up in a safe
Yep.
spot, right? And
gonna
inside
call
there,
soon.
next to your
In
Orisa,
2
would be
seconds.
a safe spot. Oh,
that here, but I got them all.
okay. So, what you should have done here,
I'm gonna call us soon. In 2 seconds.
as soon as you hear male, you should fade, so then you're not in it, and then you can coalescence, because coalescence has a pretty long range.
That here.
You wouldn't have been caught in Sigma ult either. Instead, you completely waste your coal,
Holy
because
I hate this
Uh,
DPS
I'm gonna go baptiste, maybe.
May just
Why would he
freezes
fucking
you.
Junkrat tire when they know they just used 3 ults? No.
Also,
Why is he going Doom Fist? Okay, dude.
maybe you could have saved more ults there once they used, like, as soon as you heard the male, you were like, okay, they're committing ults. I don't need to commit ults, because we just need one fight to win. But if you're switching, then you might as well have used it. I don't know why your DPS just jumped in there by themselves like that.
Get the lamp first.
Yo, Doom Fist, why don't you just go main? What is Doom Fist gonna do?
That May should not be going in. Okay, good. Because it's already lost. There's no way, nothing he can do. Good job recognizing that the fight's lost and backing out.
Where do we hold?
Both again. We have to.
That's a good field. Because the enemy team has no line of sight. That's going to give you massive.
Mortality gone.
Should be able to get this here, right? Yeah.
Torn this.
Oh, no.
No.
No, you don't. No.
Just hide.
What the fuck?
Hide Sigma.
They know I can do though. Like, they could just easily push me.
So,
They're dumb. Or me actually is, I think.
ideally here, your Reaper would have been like, I have ult, I'm gonna ult, Baptiste, can you save field for me? And you're like, oh yeah, sure, okay. And then you throw out down your field whenever the Reaper ults. But your Reaper's not communicating to you, so that's not really your fault. What you could have done, maybe, is press tab and then be like, oh, Reaper's closing in on ult, or oh, Reaper has ult. He might want to ult this fight, and then save your field for when he does. But this field wasn't bad, because it allowed your tanks to stay and face the Bastion without having to like
May
back
now,
up.
May now, right, May right. No ice block now. May, behind. May, behind, on point. On point.
Yo, focus May.
Only C9. Nice. Alright. It's really unfortunate when your two DPS aren't in point, or in voice.
Just go main this. It's gonna be better no matter what.
It's really unfortunate.
They're gonna be running a Bastion again.
Because then you, like, all your calls, like, May behind, or, earlier with the Reaper, you called Reaper behind, that, no one hears it, no one does anything about it. Like, those calls are right, like, it's just, they're not in chat. And they're bad.
It's been a while since I played on.
Also, we should be running that Mercy or that. No, not Lucio. But
Yeah.
honestly, I think Moira is better than Baptiste here.
Nice positivity, I like it. I've played with Lady Kitsune before. I don't like playing with her, she's always super toxic.
May Bastion again. Okay, follow me.
Oh, you're sick, go right.
Follow Sigma. We're running all the way around them.
So they know you're coming, but if you play this
going
right, you
upstairs?
should be able to get...
Yes. Upstairs.
So here you definitely want to throw healing.
Call Moira.
We're dead. We got both supports now. They only have shields and Bastion.
So the reason why you would want to throw a healing orb there instead of a damage, it ends up working out for you guys, I guess. But the reason you want to throw a healing orb there is because Bastion does a lot of damage, right? But since you're like,
They got Doom instead of
since you're super close to them, like eventually you're gonna kill the Bastion, especially since you got that early pick on their Baptiste, I think. But the problem is, you want your team to survive long enough so that eventually you can kill the Bastion, right? So yes, you can get a little bit of extra damage in on the Bastion with your damage orb, but it's so insignificant in the grand scheme of things. Because again, he has armor, he has his passive, and more is probably still healing him. So it's more important that your team, because like, whenever you jump a Bastion, it always comes, like most of the time, whenever you kill the Bastion, your team is always like super low on health, right? Because they just barely scraped it out alive. And so you want to keep your team up long enough so that your team can't kill the Bastion. Because in that situation, your team kills the Bastion 100% of the time, 10 times out of 10, if your team can survive. So it's your job to make sure that your team does survive, basically.
Stay on point.
That should also be a healing orb there because you're down. So, whenever you're down, the only time you want to be, like, as a general rule of thumb, this obviously doesn't apply to every single case, but as a general rule of thumb, if you're down some people, if your team has less players alive than the other team, you want to be throwing healing orbs so that you can stabilize your team and hopefully keep them alive long enough so that your teammates can get a pick or something. Now, obviously, there are times where like you can throw a damage orb to help secure that pick quicker, and then you're fighting an even fight, right? But most of the time, you want to be throwing healing orbs and focus more on healing. Moira is a support, and you should be healing first and foremost, but her damage, like the rest of her kit, comes in play when you're already like fulfilled that job of a healer and you can do other things, or if someone else on your team is fulfilling that job of a healer at that time, and then you can during that time go do other things. So like when you have Lucio beat, you can go do other things, go throw damage orbs, whatever, right? But in fights where you're not sure if you're gonna, like, where you just want your teammates to live, definitely focus more on healing. And in this fight, where it's overtime, if you lose, you get off, and if you get off point, you lose. You definitely want to be making sure that your teammates stay alive, or else you lose, right? So focus more on healing in these kind of situations. So you lose, but could you have played better? Of course, you can always play better. Your DPS were bad, and they weren't in chat. That's the biggest problem. They weren't there to communicate. They didn't really hear any of the rest of your team's communication, and yeah, it happens. So overall, like, you're doing a lot better compared to the last Moira Vod I reviewed of you. Like, you're not just only healing, and you're being like, you're throwing out orbs before you coalescence, and you're using damage orbs more, and you're dealing damage more, which are all good things. But too much of a good thing becomes a bad thing, right? So you don't want to always be throwing out damage orbs. You don't want to always be holding down right click, and you're not always doing it. Like 35,000 healing is insane, right? So what I'm trying to say is, it's all about finding the balance, right? Finding the balance between when you should be throwing healing orbs, when you should be throwing damage orbs, and that just comes with experience, honestly. The more you play more, the more you'll find yourself in situations where you'll throw a damage orb and you're like, oh, in hindsight you'll be like, oh, maybe I should have thrown a healing orb there, because of so and so, or because like then my team would have been alive enough for them to pop off or whatever, and you'll get experience as you go along. So the next time you're in that situation, you'll be like, oh, I remember last time I threw a damage orb here, and I ended up losing the fight because this happened. So this time I'm gonna try throwing a healing orb, see what happens, and it's hard, honestly. But I guess just as a general rule of thumb, whenever you're down teammates, you want to be focusing more on healing. Whenever you want to stabilize, right? Because I've said this a couple times already, I think. Your damage orbs and your damage is more of like, your damage orb especially is more of like you said in DMs, it's more of a applying pressure kind of tool, right? You apply pressure to certain squishy targets, so it makes them reconsider going in. Either makes them back up or wait a bit to get healing, stuff like that. You don't really want to be using damage when you're already like, unless you see someone who's low and you're sure you can get the kill. You don't really want to be using damage if you know, like, I don't know. It's hard because I'm really bad. I cannot find the words for this right now. But it's basically just finding the balance between healing and damage. You have to just trust your team sometimes, as Mora. Trust that if you keep them up, they can make something happen. And usually that is the case. If you can keep your teammates up long enough, they can usually make things happen. Versus you trying to force things to happen or take things into your own hands with orbs, which you should still do, right? But don't do too much of it. There are a lot of fights where if you had just focused more on healing, you probably would have been able to win, because then your teammates would have lived, and then they would have had like impactful ults, or would have gotten impactful ults, or would have been able to just like stay alive long enough to deal enough damage that the enemy team dies, right? So there's that aspect. I believe there's also fading. there's a couple times throughout this VOD where you fade and you find yourself kind of out in the open, and then you have like no way to get to cover without just walking there, you know, and you're kind of separated from your teammates, so they can't help you either. So then you end up getting jumped by Doomfist or end up dying to someone else. So whenever you fade, you always want to make sure that you come out of fade in either a safe spot or next to a safe spot. There's somewhere where you can get to a safe spot and very quickly, or next to teammates. You never want to just fade and find yourself out in the open. In team fights, that is, right? Yeah, like if you're coming back from spawn, you know, or if you're just using it as mobility, that's fine. But you always want to, yeah. I guess that's all I have to say about that. I'm sure. Just fade to safe places. Don't fade to dangerous places, because once you use your fade, you're really, really vulnerable, and you don't ever want to be vulnerable if you can avoid it, right? Other than those things, I don't think there's anything else. I think I covered pretty much everything that I noticed. I guess sort of along the lines of the fading thing, like last fight, not last fight, but one of the fights on second round when you're defending, Mei ults and then you fade. You don't fade, rather you just coalescence there, and then you get frozen out of while you're coalescing and you lose it. Just fade, right? Fade before you get caught in ults. So then, especially when you have coalescence, because coalescence is long range, so then you can keep your teammates up who are in those ults while you are not in that ult. While we're talking about ults, Sigma, after he slams people down with his ult, be sure to heal up your team, because that's when they're going to be the weakest. Yeah, other than those things, hopefully this was helpful. Thanks for watching.